Hi everybody, my name is John of Millinery and welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time here, hi, I'm John. This is Millinery channel. We talk about millinery tutorials, everything about hats. So welcome, and if you are a long time viewer, welcome back. Two things. It's Wednesday and I'm uploading. I'm changing my upload schedule to Wednesdays. I'm going to trial Wednesdays, see if that makes any difference to this channel. So videos from this week will go on Wednesdays as opposed to Fridays. And secondly, as you can see from the title of this video, this is a new kind of series I'm looking at doing. So it's taking vintage patterns and then making them with modern fabrics. So let me explain. I have this is a Vogue 7464 pattern, and I think most milliners will have this pattern, or at least have know of this pattern. And this is, I believe, according to the Vogue website, Vogue Patterns website, this is around about 30, so it's like 30s hats you would see in the 1930s. So yeah, so in this video I tried to make, it was basically pattern D, so I'll put a picture of that on the screen now. This was pretty hard to do, I'm not gonna lie. The instructions weren't, they were clear up to a point, and then after that point I was like, what is going on? I don't understand. So I did struggle a little bit with this pattern, but what I did is I made it out of this polyurethane, I think that's what it's called, fabric. It's got no stretch, it's got no bias, so it was a struggle. So if you want to see me make this hat in this fabric, let's get started. I had already cut the pattern pieces out of the tissue, but I didn't want to mark them, so I traced them onto some baking paper, which was translucent enough just to see the patterns through. I also made sure I noted any stitching points on the pattern. I only traced along the cutting lines and not the stitching lines, as all the stitching lines for the seam allowance were 1/4 of an inch, so I'd only had one seam allowance width to think about. These were then cut out of the fabric with interfacing cut for the side of the crown and the head fitting. You didn't need interfacing for the side of the crown, but I wanted some structure in that anyway. This was a little tricky to do as tailor's chalk wouldn't work on this, so I ended up using a fine line pen. One thing I noticed, I probably should have used more objects to weigh down the pattern, but I was working with what I got. The fabric I used is a polyurethane from Spotlight in Australia and is priced at $25 per metre and has a width of 60 centimetres. Following the pattern, the head fitting part of the crown, as I mentioned earlier, needs interfacing. But as this is polyfabric, I was worried that the heat would mess it up, and I had cut my interfacing the same size as the fabric. So what I did is I used bulldog clips to keep the interfacing and the fabric together, so it's easier to, so it doesn't like mess around. And I also cut interfacing for the side part of the crown, as I mentioned earlier. The first step was to stitch the ends of the crown together, which was fine, and then pin the top to the crown, matching the marks and having even edges. It then says stitch easing in fullness. Well, this was hard to do. There's nothing really to ease. Maybe it was the way I was sewing, but I couldn't ease the fabric as well, as it kept slipping all over the place. But I did manage to sew it together though, so that is a win in my eyes. Next was to turn right side out. So here you can see how messy the fabric coating looks. I'll be honest, I'm not really sure how this fabric is supposed to be used if it looks like this after one sewing only. The next step was to fuse the interfacing to the band, but as this plastic, obviously, as mentioned, I skipped that step, and I used bulldog clips to hold. And now I'm looking at the steps. I did notice, you'll see here, that was a fold on the edges of the band, but it doesn't say to fold the edges in on itself, so that could have affected the fit a little. But I went ahead and added the elastic as requested, and I did this with a hand sew needle. The next step threw me a little. I got the basic principle of what I needed to do, but the diagram just didn't make sense. So here we go. This is what it says. With right sides together, fold the band along the fold line, stitch ends and turn right side out. I was well confused at this point, and I kind of knew what I needed to do, so I freestyled. I folded along the fold line, putting the wrong sides together, and stitched the top closed. This was then bulldog clipped to the crown, trying to match up the elastic with the centre back seam. At this point I was supposed to add a grosgrain ribbon, but I thought this looked like a mess. So I thought I'm not going to waste any more of my supplies on this disaster of a hat. So what I did is instead I just sewed the headband to the crown very unsuccessfully, following the stitch lines, which were 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. Oh dear me. So this is what we're up to so far. I mean, it looks fine, as in a shape. However, this fabric was not suitable at all for doing this, but I am going to persevere. So there's a couple of things. So on the inside you can see, let me just make sure, because I want to make sure I can show you. So the inside's not looking too bad. Obviously this didn't curve nicely because obviously it wasn't cut on the bias or anything, so that was a bit of an issue. And this seam here, it didn't join up somehow, and I didn't as you can remember from what you've just seen, this section here, I wasn't too sure what that was. I didn't understand it, so I just edged it. I don't think it looks too bad actually, like that. And another thing I noticed as well, you can see all the marks. So yeah, that was an issue. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to go around, hide the stitches with, like, pull this down like this, if you can, a bit like it is at the front, and hide that stitch line. I'm going to cut out some of the flowers and position them, and then I might do something with this top, and just make sure I pull off all the plastic, because I didn't realise there was plastic on it. I thought the plastic was part of the fabric. So yeah, I will crack on with that, and I'll catch up with you at the end. The trim was easy. I used the flower templates, and I actually used a Sharpie marker, which was a better pen to use, and I cut out 3 small and 3 large flowers, and then these were tacked onto the front of the hat with just 1 stitch, but did bunch them up together to give it some fullness. And here is the final hat. So, a couple of things. First of all, this fabric was totally not suitable for this at all. It was slippy, there was no grain, there's no stretch, there's no ease. You can't pin it, so that's why I had to use the bulldog clips. Secondly, the pattern was great up to a point, and then once I hit that point, I think it was when I was adding the elastic in, I didn't understand what was supposed to go next. So from making hats, I kind of understood what I needed to do, but I was trying to follow the instructions, and I just found the instructions just ridiculous. Once I got to the folding of this bit, which I didn't like, this section here, which I really didn't understand what it was trying to ask me to do, and I was like, well, I can kind of understand what I need to do, so I'm just going to try and figure it out myself. That partly could have been due to the fact I was using this sort of type of material instead of the suggested material. And then finally, the fabric choice. So the fabric choice, like I say, it didn't have any stretch, it didn't have any ease, it was hard, you couldn't pin it. So trying to line things up, trying to position things when you're sewing, once you sew, you put a hole in it, you can't unpick it because you're going to have a hole. So it is kind of one of those fabrics where you have to do it, and it has to be done right first time. But looking on camera, I mean, I'm looking on camera now and it's looking really nice on camera. But in reality, it's not looking as good. I think you can catch some of those pitted bits and marks and things from the top. So if I were going to do this again with this material, I would try and protect this top layer. The rest of it seems pretty fine. It's just this one top layer here, which has got quite a lot of pits and marks and bumps and lumps and scratches. So my question to you is, have you tried this pattern? If you have, let me know in the comments down below. And do you have any ideas for vintage patterns or modern materials that I can use in future videos? I am looking at, I have made pattern B before and that was a nightmare. I'm thinking of making pattern C for the next video, and then hopefully by that point I'll have heard from you guys about patterns that you want me to try. So let me know in the comments down below links to any patterns that you think I should be trying in this series, or any modern materials that you want to see me try and use to make into a hat. Well, thank you very much for watching. This was a challenge, to say the least. I'm pretty impressed it turned out. I just wish it was a little less marked than usual. So yeah. But anyway, thanks for watching. Links to everything will be in the description box below, as well as links to all my social media. There's also a link to my Patreon, as well as my subscription box server, which I'm still looking for people to take part in that. Until next week, see you later. Bye.